Today's conversation is about an issue that demands our attention, our compassion, and our action: human trafficking and the lives of the survivors who have lived through exploitation. Trafficking is not simply a story about a crime, it's a story about human beings, children, teenagers, and adults who have been manipulated, coerced, threatened, groomed, or exploited. And survivors should never be defined only by what happened to them. They are people with courage, dignity, dreams, and futures. And today I'm so honored to welcome back to the Warriors the Honorable Fernando Camacho, whose judicial career has really included groundbreaking work addressing commercial sexual exploitation and human trafficking. Judge Camacho has spoken extensively about the need for the justice system to recognize trafficking victims as victims rather than simply treating them as offenders. His work has helped create specialized approaches for exploited young people. Helped contribute His work has helped contribute to the development of New York's human trafficking intervention courts. There's so much more we're going to get into. I want him to speak. You don't want to hear me, Warriors. So, Judge, thank you so much for joining the Warriors. Let's jump right in.
Thanks for having me, Lynn.
Of course, I want to start with, I was thinking, you have worked so extensively with young people in prostitution-related cases. You've designed so many different court models to address all of this, appointed to the New York State Court of Claims and served as an acting Supreme Court Justice in Suffolk County. But I remember when I first met you, you told me a story that really made you stand up and recognize, like you had this kind of light bulb moment. Do you know what I'm talking about? You told me this story and it has stuck with me for all these years. Would you please share that with us?
Sure. Well, I was part of the problem. I was part of those uninformed, ignorant individuals in the justice system who continued to re-victimize victims and treated individuals in the commercial sex trade as criminals and not what they really are, which were victims.
Yes.
So we put them in handcuffs, put them in jail cells, re-victimized them. And we were in a very, very bad place. I mean, Lynn, when I first started over 40 years ago as a prosecutor, the following scenario was not uncommon. A police officer would drive up to a car where a 42-year-old married father of three would be having sex with a 14-year-old, and the following would happen. Hey, get out of the car, get out of the car. Yes, officer. And the man would say, officer, please, don't arrest me. If my wife knows, if I lose my job, I'll lose my family, please. All right, you, get out of here. I never want to see you again. You, how old are you? Well, I'm 16. They would lie about their ages because the trafficker told them to. Said, I'm 16. Okay, you get in that wagon over there. You're in handcuffs. Get in that wagon. That 14-year-old kid would spend the next 2 days waiting to be arraigned. They go before the judge, and we'd play in the justice system. We play, let's make a deal. All right, judge, 30 days in jail. She's got 5 conditions. Judge conduct. She please have 10. She's a kid. The legal aid attorney would say, all right, 20 days, take charge. And the trafficker, the pimp, would be in the audience, giving her a thumbs up or a thumbs down, calculating. How much bail will it cost me to have her off the streets for 2 weeks? How much is $500? Which is more? No, you know what? Take the 10 days, go in. And they go, and the minute that they were finished with their 10-day sentence, they'd be right back on the track. And I played that game as a prosecutor when I first started and as a judge. 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, take charge. And one evening, I was sitting in arraignments in Queens County, Lynn, about 25 years ago. And this young 16-year-old comes up for arraignment. She's been arrested 5 times for prostitution. She's 16. And I'm about to say 30 days in jail. And I looked at this kid. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. What am I doing?
Yeah.
So I said, nope. I asked the attorneys to come up, legal aid attorney, come up. I want to know her story. And I learned her story. And her story is like thousands I've heard since. She was a runaway, a throwaway. Nobody wanted her, looking for somebody to care about her, somebody to protect her, somebody to love her. You're going to take care of me? Yes, come on. Now you're on the track, and now you can't leave. Can I go back? No, you're on the track now. You're not going anywhere. You're making me too much money. And I've heard that story again and again and again. And after that day, I never sentenced another person again to jail for prostitution-related offense. And that led to starting the first human trafficking intervention court in Queens County over 25 years ago or so, which was These are not victims. These are not criminals. They're victims. Stop re-victimizing. Stop locking them up. Let's get them support. Let's get them services. Let's get them social workers. Let's try to help them get out of the commercial sex trade.
Yeah, I mean, excellent. I remember when you told me that story, it really has stuck with me all these years. I want the public to understand more. You and me, others, we do this, like we understand. But the public has to understand that this trafficking, which is nobody's exempt, correct, Judge? I mean, it's in every community, it's all over, every town, rural areas across the United States, not only here in New York State. But it doesn't look like that common perception still people have of somebody in chains or, the white van, all of that. We definitely need more of a kind of a public-private sort of justice system partnership. Would you agree with that? So we can have more, companies help us with resources for these victims, survivors, so we can give them housing and give them job training or give them education. We need a full circle of everything. What are some of the signs that you want to point out today in 2026 that you see that people should recognize if they see any of this? This may be a trafficking victim, especially of a child. What are some of the signs?
So my friend Alyssa, who's a survivor leader, tells a story about how she got involved, how she was brought into the commercial sex trade at the age of 14. She's in the foster care system, and she runs away from the foster. I mean, and she's you're talking about the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. Yeah. Sad children who are traumatized to begin with, who've been sexually abused, physically abused, from dysfunctional homes. They're looking for somebody to care about them, take care of them. She ran away, met this man, and you know what happened, Lynn? Right? She talks about it at the age of 14, right in front of her. The man got on the phone. Hey, nephew, I have something for you. Younger man came for $20. He gave that man $20. Alyssa says, I was sold for $20, a 14-year-old child. And what she talks about is really, really important, Lynn. She wrote a piece called Nobody Asked. How come nobody asked? Yeah. And she talks about how the entire community failed her. From the school bus driver who picked it up at the bus stop and saw her slapping her around one day. Why didn't he say something? To her caseworker from the foster care system. How come she didn't ask? To the school teacher who saw me coming crying every day with these ridiculous outfits and this drug habit that I couldn't afford because I had no money. How come she didn't ask? How come these people didn't ask me? Alyssa, what is going on? Nobody asked. And it has to be a community-wide effort. Mm-hmm. All of us need to understand and be aware of the signs. These are vulnerable children, the most vulnerable. They're sad kids. Kids who walk around in school depressed, crying all the time. Kid, what's the matter? What's wrong? The kid who comes in with fancy new gadgets that she can't afford. Where'd you get that? The kid who goes to the emergency room with bruises. Or like you said, I went with a broken arm once because he broke my arm, and nobody said, Alyssa, how'd your arm get broken? Oh, I just fell. Nobody asked another question. They saw me with this ridiculous outfits. They saw me crying in the corner. They saw me. I used to like to engage in sports. I stopped caring about anything. This guy who always walked around with me telling me what to do. I'm in a restaurant with adults, and nobody said anything. The guy who grabbed me, let's get out of here now. Come on now. Let's get out of here. Guy's 30 years old. I'm 15. Nobody said anything. It is about raising awareness throughout our communities. Every person should know and look for the signs and ask, Alyssa, what's wrong? What's happening?
Oh, you bring up, I'm thinking my head's spinning now. First of all, a question I get a lot, almost on a daily basis. Oh, Lynn, why doesn't the kid run away? And I think you just pointed out, where are these kids running to? There's nowhere. They think they're safer, I guess, with this controlling person. And also, I bet you Alyssa didn't even realize in the beginning, like this was a human trafficking, sex trafficking, right? Because most of the victims we work with, survivors, they're like, they could be my age now. And they'll be like, I didn't know what that was then. until, so we do have more awareness. We do have more great people working on things. We have you, Judge, with what you're doing. I mean, it's such an honor, really, to speak with you, to know you. I'm humbled that you're joining me today. But why are we so morally corrupt? I hear story after story about foster care. I don't understand. Healthcare, yes, they visit, I think it's 7 times or something. There's some stat out there about, sex trafficking victims, like visiting the emergency rooms. Yet we have all this training I keep hearing about in hospitals. Yet why do we still have this at this level, this problem of this public awareness? I mean, I'm asking you a lot of things, even the foster care system, that whole thing has to be retooled. Why don't people push back more? Why aren't they calling 911 immediately, or the trafficking hotline, or their local resource? Why are they looking the other way? I'll never understand this.
It is difficult to confront. It is a painful, horrible truth. When you think about commercial sexual exploitation, children, nobody wants to think about it. It hurts. I remember going to so many of these different meetings and panels and seminars where trafficking survivors would speak, and it hurt because their stories are so sad, so painful. I almost wanted to crawl under the desk and like, stop. People would rather ignore it than to face the reality of the suffering that's out there, the real suffering, the hellish existence that some of these individuals are living in every single day. Who wants to, when you're driving out, and I say this all the time because this is the truth, when you're driving out with your family on the Long Island Expressway out to the Hamptons, and you're driving past these big hotels, and your kids are there, and you're smiling, and to think about the fact that they look around the hotels and motels on a beautiful Saturday morning. In every one of these, there are young people, there are individuals who are being bought and sold. They're being sold by violent, unscrupulous individuals with no conscience, and they're being bought by people who are lying to themselves. You know what they say, Lynn? The kid was down on her luck. I thought I'd throw her a few bucks. I was just trying to help her out. Liar, hypocrite. So it is a combination of, I don't want to face it because it's too ugly. And you know what? Am I really going to make a difference? Yes, one person can make a difference. But if I really stand up and make a phone call and say, this 15-year-old is being dragged around by this 30-year-old guy in this diner, that is there any? That's it's hard to do that. But if people understand that if you can save one person from this horrible existence, you're making a difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I know people don't want to get involved in things. I don't know how you feel, Judge, about this. I feel like because of the internet, well, not, I don't think, I think this is fact, I think. I mean, I feel like we have more of this exploitation surrounding than we had even 5 years ago. Does it seem like that to you, that because there's not a lot of accountability, certainly we need to talk more about this ending demand and getting back to that buyer and that customer. Does it seem to you, and I don't want to hold you to anything, but like, does it seem like there's more of this going on fueled by the internet? It seems like it's become like more normalized, this whole sexual thing, and it's kind of in one ear out the other. And when you said, oh, I was helping the girl out, or could be a boy too, whatever. We have boys, we can't forget about them involved in all of this as well. But I actually had somebody I shared privately with you a story the other day, somebody well known here in New York. And when I gave and I was with survivors, my whole counsel person, he looked at me and said, yeah, but men need companionship. And right there, I'm like, after an hour, that's the answer coming. I have constituents of yours in the room. I've got survivors in the room. We're talking about the massage parlors in your district. And this is what you say to me. I'm like, sound the alarm. If this this was in 2025. There's a big problem. There's a big disconnect. Do you think it's more common now, or do you think it's just out of the woodwork more?
I think it's always been there.
Yes.
I think we have made great advances. I mean, we've passed legislation over the last 20 plus years that it's making it easy. It's giving them more support and services. It's always been there. I just think it's more visible now because of social media, and because of the media coverage. And I think part of the problem, Lynn, and I'll tell you one story about the cases which is now over, so I can talk about it. A 16-year-old named Tori, whose dad passed away. She started using drugs, wound up in a bad place. This guy grabbed her and said, "Can I go home now?" "Nope, you're not going anywhere." And for 7 days, he held her in a motel room where a stranger after stranger after stranger would come in and have sex with her, with a 16-year-old. And these were people with big business people. These were individuals who, and you know what they said? She ultimately was able to get away and flag down a police car, and her trafficker was prosecuted and tried and convicted. But the detectives did a great job. They found some of the buyers, and they came in to testify. And Lynn, they actually said, "Yeah, the kid told me she was being held against her will. Can I please call 911? I wasn't going to get involved. But you know what? I didn't do anything. I just gave her the money. I said, okay, I'm out of here. I didn't want to get involved." So it is that sort of apathy, that indifference, that is making it difficult to eliminate it altogether. We're making progress. It's getting better, but it's still there. The kids are still 12. They're still 13. They're still 14, being bought and sold, held against their will, trafficked. We need to do more. We need to change. Again, going back to where we started, awareness, community-wide awareness. No, this is not right. This is not normal. This is not legitimate.
Yeah. I mean, especially our precious kids, the demand is for younger and younger, right? We have cases we know about 8, 9, 10 years old, right? Explain, though, the justice system, let's be realistic, Judge, about everything, can't do everything. Right now, we've made tremendous strides with survivor leadership, putting them at the table, listening to them to create policy, what we need to do. What do they need? What kind of services? This is something I run into all the time. People think, the public, I'm going to say, and it's not their fault. They just don't hear a lot of facts. You'll hear a lot about the Diddy case, all those kind of cases, but you don't hear about everyday people, kids. What do they need? What is the course of action for, say it's a 16-year-old girl. She finally gets out of this horror. What does her path look like? What should it look like? What do we need to do to help her?
Well, it's very. This might sound hokey to you, Lynn, but this is the way I look at it, and I really do believe this. Judith Herman, Dr. Herman at Harvard Medical School, wrote a book called Truth and Repair, and I speak to her. I've spoken to her in the past quite often, and she has made a career out of studying trauma, all kinds of trauma. And she once said to me, "The most powerful, destructive trauma I've ever had to deal with, I've ever studied, is the trauma suffered by trafficking victims." She said, it's like being, especially kids, it's like being raped again and again and again and again, every day, 15 times a day, every week, for weeks, for months, for years, being raped again and again and again. And one story that stands out about just how the term sex work, which is commonly used by the media. I was at a New York State Senator's office, I won't mention his name, about 10, 15 years ago, advocating for more services for trafficking victims. And a trafficking survivor leader who has made just a tremendous career for herself, was there with me. And the senator asked me, "So Judge, what's wrong with the term sex work? Why wouldn't you use sex work?" And I give him my explanation, just, sort of undermining what we're trying to accomplish. They're normalizing something that in many cases it's not legitimate. And all of a sudden, I'm doing my legal explanation and and all of a sudden she starts getting upset and pounding on the table. And she said, "Senator, I was kept in the back of a house for months and months and months, 24 hours a day, 7 days of work, 7 days a week. All right, get up now, work, work, work. 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, all hours of day and night. All right, come on out here, work, work, work." And she said, "Senator," with her voice trembling, "Senator, that was not work, work, work. That was rape, rape, rape." And I think our community-wide, we need to understand that.
Yeah. I don't even know how to respond to that, because that people don't, judge, even understand there was a study, it was about 97% of those, I call them prostituted people. I don't even say like prostitutes. I'm just prostituted people. 97% are forced into it. They're coerced. It's not their choice, kind of thing. How everybody can't understand this is just wrong. And are we going to stop all of this? No, but we can educate, intervene, prevent, new victims. We need programs in the schools, and I mean real programs, Judge, because they're, we have programs in some schools. It's watch this video for 10 minutes and check off some boxes. To me, that is not an educational piece. And we do need the survivor voice. I've never been trafficked. I don't think you've been trafficked. We need these survivors who are strong enough and want to do it. I'm always very careful when it comes to survivors. I never want to put what we call in showbiz, like the dog and pony show, utilize them. Do you know what I'm saying? They have to want to do it. They're strong enough to do it. That's what they do. That helps them heal. We need this in the schools. We need these survivors. And I'm talking about, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, get in there and teach about this. I'm concerned. I'm jumping around a little bit, so bear with me. I'm concerned now that, as you know, many of these children and young adults are forced into all these other crimes. It's not just all this, prostitution type thing. They're forced to drug related. They're forced to robberies. What's going on with all of that? And how can we protect them? Because I know too many that are trying to get their records cleared. And give us the landscape. What's going on with that?
So again, we've made a lot of progress in terms of the justice system not re-victimizing the victims. Therefore, the arrests for prostitution are way down. If not, in some counties, there's no arrest for prostitution anymore. And that's a great thing. That's what we've all been trying to accomplish for years and years and years. That's where I started 25 years ago. The problem now that we have now is, they're not coming into the court system. They're not becoming court involved with the prostitution charge, which was the red flag, the big red flag, right? They're coming in on drug cases. They're coming in on robberies. They're coming in on assaults. Hey, you have a trafficker. Hey, listen, take these drugs over to Joe's house. She got stopped. She's arrested. Hey, the cops are behind us. Here, take my gun. Put it in your bag. She gets arrested for the gun. You know what? This John seemed to have a lot of money. This buyer had a lot of money. Take him in the room. I'm going to come in and rob him. What's she supposed to say? No, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Sure enough, she's an accomplice to a robbery. So they're still coming into the court system. But they're not coming in with the big red flag, arrested for prostitution. They're coming in with all these different types of charges. So we need to adapt. We need to get better in the justice system in identifying who the victims are, who the trafficking victims are. Even though they're coming, some of them, Lynn, are coming in on murder cases. There's a famous case out here from Long Island, which is now, I can talk about it because it's not pending or impending anymore. Hey, you're getting too close to that buyer. I think he likes you too much. You know what? I'm going to come into the room and rob him what's he supposed to say? No, I'm not part of this.
Yeah.
Sure enough, he comes into the room. He tries to rob him. There's a fight. The buyer winds up dead. She's now charged as an accomplice to murder. So even murder charges. So we need to adapt to that reality. Yes, this is a great thing that we're no longer making arrests for prostitution, but it's making it more difficult for us in the justice system to identify who the trafficking victims are when they're charged with other types of offenses.
What do you want to say, Judge, right now to somebody listening, or will get a hold of this video and hear us? And, I share all over different places what we do at the Warriors. A lot of these victims, survivors, I never get that straight, Judge. Sometimes they want to be called victims. Sometimes they say we're survivors. So I kind of just, I don't know what you call them. I don't know what to call them. I never want to insult anybody. So I use both words. What word do you use?
When they're being trafficked, at the time that they're being trafficked, they're trafficking victims.
They're victims.
When they ultimately overcome that and they move on and they succeed and they leave the commercial sex trade, and they're survivor. They're survivors and survivor leaders. And Lynn, we have all these, we glamorize superheroes, right? We have all these superhero movies now in the theaters. All the kids are going to go see Spider-Man. You know what the real superheroes are?
Yes.
The individuals who survived that hell on earth. Those people are superheroes. They inspire me. They compel me to keep doing this work. No matter how tired I get, how weary I get, they compel me to keep trying. They are the ones who educated me when I was ignorant and part of the problem. They're the ones who educated the lawmakers who passed these great bills. And they're the ones, that's the answer, Lynn. They are the reason we're ultimately going to be able to eliminate trafficking, because they are the true superheroes.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because tremendous strides have been made with survivors, but we still need to do much more and recognize them much more, and help them with housing and jobs, and paying them fairly to tell their stories. Because when I started this, most were just working for free out of the passion of their heart, like they're being part of something. Now a lot has changed. We need to really take care of our survivors. What do you want to, you answered a question. I was going to say, how do you take care of yourself? But we'll get to that in a minute. But what do you want to say to those, where I started a few minutes ago, these survivors listening that will hear this? Because I know there will be some I'm giving this video to. Directly talk to them right now, because they do get scared sometimes, of the whole justice system and that type of thing. What do you want to say?
How much I respect you, admire you, how this became clear to me about 6-7 years ago. One of the survivor leaders, I was asked to find somebody who could speak at this conference, and I said, Laura, can you do it? She goes, Judge, but I have a shift at 7-Eleven. They're not going to pay me. How do I do that? They're doing it because they're trying to help the next generation. They're seeing themselves in the kids who are being trafficked now. And they're, because of sheer will and courage, are taking on, almost single-handedly, the responsibility of saving that next generation from what they had to go through. So I just have such incredible respect for them. We need to do more. Yeah, they're doing it because it's important to them. It's part of the healing process, and it's part of saving the next generation. But they have to make a living too.
Yes.
And we need to support them more than we're supporting them now.
Yeah. And really give them a way. They feel so good about themselves when they earn, they earn their money. They feel useful. Yes, we have to do a better job about that. How do you, since you're in this day in and day out for decades now, Judge, how do you take care of yourself? Because sometimes I take a step back at the end of a day and I'm like, because we go, 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 go. We don't realize. And then sometimes it hits you. Maybe it was something about a baby. That'll hit me and knock me off my feet. How do you take care of yourself? Because it does take a mental toll.
Well, I think that the inspiration I get from the survivor leaders is a big part of it. But also, and I'll tell you a personal story, which I've shared a few times, but I'll share it with you and your listeners. About 10 years ago, I was asked to go to an event where a couple of one kid in my court had died, lost her life to this life, and I was really to the point I didn't want to do it anymore, and I had to go that night to go to this event and speak. And I said to my wife, "I'm not going." "What do you mean you're not going?" I said, "I'm not going. I can't do this anymore. I just, I can't take it anymore." And she said, "All right, before you make that decision, why don't you think about somebody that means something to you, and see if you can write a letter from that person to yourself." And immediately I thought of Erin. Erin was a young woman who was in my first court many years ago in Queens, who lost her life. She was found beaten and frozen to death on a Long Island Railroad yard on a blustery February morning. And she was the first one that we lost under my watch. I remember getting to work that day and hearing about it and punching the wall, almost breaking my hand, crying. But I kept going. So I said, you know what? I'm going to write myself a letter from Erin. So I sat down and I wrote it. And I actually just pulled it up because I want to read it to you. I've shared it a few times, but it's the reason that I keep going. So that night, that afternoon, before I had to go to the event, I wrote this letter. "Dear Judge, I heard you cried when you learned of my death. Let me help dry your tears. You cared about me. You helped me. You believed in me. You did not judge me. You respected my dignity. You did not dismiss me as a bad girl who got what was coming to her. Most of all, you did not forget about me. Don't mourn me or feel pity for me. I mattered. I was important. For one thing, I made a difference in your life. I helped change you. I inspired you. And I'm still with you. Every time you speak to a group of kids about the dangers of the life, I am at your side. When you address community groups to raise awareness of trafficking in our neighborhoods, I am whispering in your ear. Every time that you look into the eyes of a trafficking victim and you help them, you're looking at them through my eyes. And I'm smiling. When you go to Albany, I speak to legislators to advocate for services for trafficking victims. I make your voice louder. Judge, please stop feeling sad when you think of me. As you read my letter, I am here on this podium helping you to carry on my message and inspiring others to continue the fight for trafficking victims. Love, Erin. So I wrote the letter. I went that night. I spoke. And I haven't looked back since.
Thank you for sharing that. That is controlling myself. That's incredibly powerful, but that's what resonates. So if they can do it, I'm broadly saying this, then you and we can certainly do what we're doing on behalf of all these victims and kids and just all people. I think it's kind of a good note to finish up on. Do you want to provide, if somebody sees something, hears something, what do you tell them to do? The public? What should they do?
I don't have the actual number. Every community has a hotline, anonymous hotline.
Yeah, I'll fill it in the body of the video. I will have different information, but call.
Yes, call. In our community, in our county, we have a hotline. that goes right to the Suffolk County Police Department, and it is anonymous. They can't share it with anyone, and they respond because one of the big changes that we're seeing is law enforcement is becoming more and more aware,
Yes.
and really care.
Yeah. Well, Judge Fernando Camacho, after reading that letter, I think we should stop here. Promise me you will return. We need to talk more often and keep this out, all of this information out into the public, for awareness, for education. I want to thank you for sharing a bit of your incredible work that you do, because I know you do so much all the time. And again, it's such an honor to speak with you. To our viewers, survivors understand are not their trauma. They are people like you and me. They're not a charge, on a court docket, right? They're human beings who deserve dignity and safety, opportunity and justice. And I really feel, Judge, 2026, it's a different country, a different world. We all need to step up, and we all can do something. So any final words before I let you go?
Just, I want to thank you for everything that you do, and just getting the word out there, getting the message out there.
Thank you.
This has been the most important work of my life, and I'll never stop doing it.
And that's why we love you. And that's why you are the #1 warrior. And I'm just so proud you're in our home state of New York leading this charge. Thank you, Judge Fernando Camacho. Promise me we will speak again soon.
Of course. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.